Harold L. Hatfield, Jr. To the State Board of Education for the term ending November 4th, 2025.
Good morning. Thank
Hello.
you. And I go by Chuck, by the way.
Chuck?
Chuck, yeah.
Chuck, as you were notified, your testimony will be taken under oath. The chair will now administer the oath. Mr. Hatfield, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Hatfield? Senator from Nicholas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Hatfield, good morning. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning. Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come and share with us just a little bit. Me being relatively new to all of this process, only being here 2 years, I haven't had an opportunity to meet so many of you all that are serving in the various communities around. And so, I want to get to know a little bit about the people that, I'm being asked to consent for various positions. If you would for us, just briefly, explain a little bit about your educational background, your family background, and your passion a little bit about education.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be glad to. I've been in education for 43 years. Very fortunate to spend all 43 years in the Putnam County school system. I started out as a teacher, and then became an assistant principal, then principal, then moved to the central office where I was director of early childhood education for a period of time, and then assistant superintendent over personnel and pupil services, and then deputy superintendent, and then in 2004 I became a superintendent. My educational background, I am a proud graduate of Glenville State College and Marshall University Graduate School. Have a master's plus 45 and beyond. I have three grown children, 4 grandchildren. Proud to say my youngest son is serving our country as a Marine in the United States Marine Corps, stationed in Hawaii, and I've been around education, as I say, for 43 years, and very fortunate that was in a great county like Putnam County.
Well, his service to our country is a testament of your family and your dedication and to serving. And if you would, on behalf of us, please extend to him our appreciation for his service to our country.
I will, and I appreciate that.
What do you see your role being as a State Board of Education member?
Well, I see my role as a state board member as bringing my experience to the board, to the position, and I just retired in July 1, so I'm still very familiar, with what's going on in education at the local level and the state level as well. So I think I can bring that perspective and knowledge base, and that's my purpose.
Okay. Recognizing that your appointment's fairly new,
right.
Just a couple of weeks old now.
Right.
You recognize that there's a financial disclosure that has to be filed with the Ethics Commission. Have you filed that disclosure?
I have not had an opportunity to do that yet. I will be doing that right away.
Okay.
But I don't know, there's nothing, I have no conflicts that I'm aware of.
Okay. So apart from your retirement, you and your spouse receive no other income from any other sources?
Well, I have my retirement and Social Security, and my spouse is still working. She is principal of Winfield Elementary School in Putnam County.
Okay. Okay. What do you perceive as your number one goal to achieve as a State Board of Education member?
Well, I think my number one goal is to listen to the people at the local level. I think so many times, you know, we even see that in education at the local level. The farther you get from the classroom, the farther removed you are, the less impact you may have, and the less understanding you may have. You know, and I say this not in jest, I believe it. I believe our teachers are our experts. I don't believe people at central office are experts, and I don't believe the superintendents are experts in education. You know, I haven't been in a classroom for 35 years. So I believe with everything in me, we have to listen to those folks on the front line and provide them as much resource and support as we possibly can. And I see that as my role even as a state board member. I think I don't, you know, I've often said that I don't envy people being in the position of a state board member or even a legislator for this reason. The state of West Virginia is so diverse. I think it's almost impossible to develop legislation that'll work in 55 counties in the state of West Virginia, and the same developing state board policy. I think our policies have to be very broad in nature and as flexible as possible, because to allow for those differences and to give the local control as best we can.
You spoke about the broadness of our policies. Do you feel like the policies that we have in place then are overly restrictive?
I think some of them are. Yes, I do. Yeah.
And is that based on your own opinion, or is that based on conversations that you've had with others?
But both, actually. For example, I'll give you an example.
Please.
2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember the exact date. You know, a policy was or a directive from the state board, the State Department, was that we were to implement integrated math in our high schools. Well, we did that in Putnam County. We followed the policy and the directive. Well, quite frankly, it didn't work very well in Putnam County. So after monitoring that for 3 years, collecting data, all 4 of our high schools, math scores went down. So I felt the responsibility as superintendent of Putnam County to go before the state board and ask for a waiver to that policy. Not that it may have worked in some counties, and the state board actually then allowed the flexibility for those counties that wished to stay with the integrated math. They could. Those counties that didn't could go back to the traditional math, which is algebra, trig, the natural progression. So there, I think, is a perfect example where one size doesn't fit all, and one program doesn't fit all. So I think we have to have that flexibility and that diversity and that local control.
Local control. So you're a believer that the local boards of education need to have more local control to be able to do things they need to do based on what they see happening within the communities that they serve. Yes,
sir, I do, because I truly believe in our teachers and our people in the schools. It really doesn't matter what kind of policy we develop or what kind of, and I'm just speaking from the heart, okay?
Please.
What kind of law we pass, if teachers don't buy into it or if they don't get the job done, then it's not going to be successful.
Where's the ultimate impact in that scenario?
Well, the ultimate impact, I think, is to recognize our teachers as professionals, to treat them as professionals, listen to them, and they know what's best. Even students, I've often said, you know, you really want to know what's going on in a school? Talk to the kids. They will be upfront, honest with you, and that's probably as good evaluation as you can get on a school. So I think it's just a matter of we really, you know, I think a lot of times we give lip service to, you know, how much teachers have impact on everybody's lives. You know, I've heard speaker after speaker talk about a teacher that had the impact that changed their life and those kinds of things. Well, those things are true, and we have to recognize teachers for what they really do every day and the impact that they have on children.
Okay. During the State of the State address, we heard the governor talking about consolidation, and I'm asking the same question that I've asked, you know, all of the others that have appeared before us this morning. How do you perceive? What do you perceive your role to be as a State Board of Education member with regard to consolidation as it's being faced in so many of our counties? And I've got 2 counties, for instance, in my district that are facing consolidation issues right now.
Well, you know, I think most of us emotionally or philosophically don't like consolidation. You know, especially if we've been West Virginians all of our life. We understand how much the community means to everyone. But at the same time, there are situations where we have losing enrollments and those kinds of things that I think we have to look at it on an individual basis. And there are certainly situations where consolidation is absolutely necessary. It's not easy. But at the role of a board member, I think our responsibility is to make sure the process has been followed and all the hearings have been held and everything is in proper order and rely on that the local school board in that community that's bringing the recommendation forward. They know their county best. And I'm sure by the time it gets to us and they've had those hearings and so forth, you know, they've looked at those, they take those things very seriously and they've looked at it very closely. And I think our role is just to make sure that the law's been followed, statutes have been followed, and the process is in place.
Have you reviewed the laws and rules and regulations applicable to consolidation, and do you feel, and what's your perspective about the rules and the laws that are in place right now regarding that?
Well, I haven't looked at them real closely recently, but in broad sense, they're developed around due process to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard and state their case and be transparent and provide reasons for it. In other words, just, you know, somebody doesn't decide we're going to close Bluefield Elementary on a whim. There obviously has to be reasons behind that and hearings held so that it is transparent and everyone gets an opportunity to speak to the issue and it's a due process thing.
Okay. I'd like to hear your thoughts about the Regional Educational Services Agency.
Well, I have mixed feelings about that, to be honest with you. I think they provide a lot of great service. I really do. I don't think the impact of those services is as great in larger counties as it is in smaller counties. I think to lose RESA, if you will, would really impact some of our smaller counties. Not necessarily, I don't think our larger counties would feel that as much, where we have more staff and those kind of things. But I think it's probably, I don't think RESA should be done away with completely. I think we should take a look at maybe a restructuring. I think there are some needs there to do some restructuring and look at things. But I do think that there's a great need for some of our smaller counties in particular for their services. You know, a smaller county, if they need an audiologist,
right,
they can't afford to hire. They don't need a full-time audiologist, nor can they afford to hire a full-time audiologist.
And many times a psychologist as well.
And yeah, those kinds of things. But those can be shared services out of a RESA that works very well in those situations. So you know, again, I think there are needs, certainly needs for them. I just think I'm very careful to say we don't need them, probably in Putnam County, we could get by pretty well without Reese, I'll be honest with you. But I'm very careful not to say that we need, because my neighbor in Reese in Clay County is in a whole different situation. That's the reason I say I think we have to allow for all this diversity. You know, we even see it within our local school system from school to school. You know, we can't necessarily do the same things in Buffalo Elementary that we can do in West Hays Elementary. They're different. So I think we have to allow for those differences.
Did you have much engagement with Office of Education Facility or Education Performance audits while you were a superintendent?
We went through you know, the reviews like all counties do.
What was your experience with those?
Well, it was good, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we need OEPA and a truly solid accountability system both. The accountability system that we have right now, the A through F, is not good.
Okay.
It's basically just based on on the results of a standardized test, and there is so much more about providing an education for a child than a standardized test. I happen to believe, and I said this when I was superintendent, I think we have to get past educating kids just to graduate high school. I think we have to develop skills for life.
Okay.
And
okay. And so you think we need to revamp that policy with regard to the A through F system?
I think absolutely that needs to be that needs to be redone.
Out of all the policies that you're associated with, which can you identify one most particularly that you want to see adapted or adopted?
Well,
or modified rather.
The assessment and accountability piece kind of go hand in hand as far as those things need to be redone. Right now, and I said this yesterday in a state board meeting, you know, we have fallen in a trap of allowing standardized tests to drive our system. And that's just not the way to go. I mean, that's a one-day snapshot. I mean, to put that much emphasis and reliability, what if that test is wrong? I can't stand up and say that test is absolutely valid without any question. That is, there's no question that is absolutely the state that child's in. Well, having said that, we have allowed that test to drive our whole system. And what if it isn't valid? Then we're making all of these decisions, we're developing all these policies around data that's invalid. So I think it has a place, but I think we have to bring forth policies and a change in philosophy that we meet the federal requirements to get our monies and so forth. But beyond that, I think there's so much more to educating a child than a standardized test that we have to recognize that and make change in that direction.
Thank you. Finally, one last question. Why should we consent to your appointment?
Well, I'm very passionate about education, obviously, or I wouldn't have been in it for 43 years. You know, I have I don't know what do you call it, a mission statement, a goal, or philosophy that I have lived by my entire life, not only in my educational life, but in my personal life as well. I am all about trust and relationships. I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what makes a difference. And I'm all about doing the right reasons, doing the right things for the right reason, no matter what it takes, to provide the best opportunities for our kids' future, and that's what I can bring to the state board, and it's really as simple as that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hatfield, for being with us this morning. Madam Chairman, I'll yield back.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
another question, but I'd just like to thank you for coming, and I wanted to congratulate you on taking the lead down in Putnam County with the math issue. In the math issue. I think that set a precedent that they started looking at the math and made some corrections. So I want to thank you for that. I remember you all, was it called the integrated system? You
Yes.
didn't? Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you. We have
Thank
a
you.
question from, okay, the senator from 15th.
Yeah, I just had one question. I've very much enjoyed your answers this morning. And for a lot of the things I had asked previously, everybody started picking up on that and was answering it throughout the cycle. And I have one that's a little bit on the lighthearted side. Look at your name here, and it's Harold L. Hatfield, Jr., but you said call me Chuck.
Right.
Explain to me how it got to be Chuck.
Well, now you will all really enjoy this. I happen to be, my grandmother on my mother's side, she wasn't real happy about me being a junior. And I happened to be born on Groundhog's Day.
Okay.
So she started calling me Chucky. And I was Chucky clear through high school until it did get down to Chuck. But that's how I'm, no Charles, no, I'm Chuck.
I knew there had to be a story there, and so I thought I'm going to ask that, but I very much appreciate your testimony. And
I appreciate being here. Thank you. Thank
We
you
have
very much.
another question from the senator from Wood.
Mr. Chairman, quickly, I know you touched on it. I just want to ask the same question as I did Mr. Perry in terms of your philosophy on Common Core standards.
Common Core standards, of course, I think, our standards have been revised, and they're not true Common Core standards. I think Common Core still a lot within those standards. I'm not sure there's a whole lot of different standards or standards, I'll be honest with you. I have not been as concerned about the standards that I have, this assessment and accountability thing. I think if you look at college and career standards, do they need to be reviewed? Yes. And could there be some changes made? But I'm not sure that a wholesale change it would actually be necessary. But a review of those standards, I think, would be necessary.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
From Marion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to commend you for offering us this venue to bring these folks in. I think what you've seen today are 4 excellent candidates. I'd like to commend Governor Justice for his selection. I was very impressed, being a former school teacher, administrator, and central office staff. I'm real convinced now that these individuals have the ability and the knowledge and the wherehouse to be excellent board members, and I want to commend you all for.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Appreciate
being
it.
here.
Thank you very much.
You just heard the bill, so we're going to have to adjourn. The staff will be in touch with the ones who did not get to be interviewed today. I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, a motion